Hello, and welcome to the arbitration conversation. So in this conversation, we're going to talk to a real expert in the field of arbitration who's also a teacher of arbitration and has gone through the shift of in-person to online teaching and what that looks like, especially in the area of arbitration. So today we are talking to Professor Stephen Shapiro. He is the director of the Hospitality and Tourism Center for the American University Washington College of Law. He's also a Chartered Institute of Arbitrator. He's part of that as well as many organizations. And honestly, I've followed his work. I know his work also in construction law, which is also very tied in with arbitration. And I really appreciate him taking the time with us. So first of all, just thank you for having a conversation about teaching arbitration.
Great. Thanks for having me, Amy. It's a great topic, talking about online learning. I guess I'll start and then let you jump in. I had done some teaching on 2U, which is an online master's in legal studies. So I had some familiarity with it, the technology, Zoom. But like everyone, we all got ambushed. No one had prepped. I'm sure it was same at your school. We shut down one day, had a spring break, and then came back online. So it was just, backpedaling, front pedaling the whole thing quickly to try and understand what we were doing. I think the theme for our conversation today, at least for me, is this has been a whole lot better than I thought it would be. There have been some strengths. We'll talk about the weaknesses, which will be obvious. And it might, at least for me, change how I go about it. So I don't know about you, but you want to start with the disadvantages and get those away?
Well, and I just want to highlight something you said just now, made me think about how, it was so abrupt, right? It was like one day you're shut down, then you suddenly have to pop up and be an online teacher.
Right.
But one thing you mentioned that I really like is this, we had to be very intentional now as we think about our pedagogies going forward, and maybe there are lessons learned, right? And things we can kind of take forward. But yeah, let's start with the disadvantages,
Okay.
which, are kind of the gripe session, if you will.
Well, I think they'll be obvious, which is most of us who do the teaching really find energy and value in not only being in the classroom with students, but walking the halls, seeing what's going on, where's the pizza, what are the events, there's a whole lot of nuance that we pick up on. I'm sure at your school, at AU Law School, there are times when the first years have memos due, and I can tell. There's just a different tenor, so that is obvious, missing that connection. And I'll leave it for a later part of our conversation, but not being able to see into their faces hurts. We miss a lot, but then I also think at times we get more candor by being faceless, oddly. So that's it's mostly a disadvantage. We'd all, given a choice, like to be back. Let's just start with that as the disadvantage, and then I'll let you go, and then we can shift into what has been surprising and good.
Yeah, no, and I think also, it's hard as a teacher constantly trying to think about, how can I make sure that this is accessible for everybody? How am I making sure that everyone is keeping up? How do I know that everyone feels involved, right? And so I think that means, we have to sort of come up with other ideas for engagement. And we have to think about ways that we can reach out outside of even the classroom time in order to make sure that all those students feel heard and have an opportunity and have a way to learn with different pedagogies, and I think that kind of makes a shift into pros in the sense that I think as teachers, we all have to come up with ideas, right? And ways that it could become more engaging. I'm curious what your sort of thoughts were on that piece.
Well, before we go there, one last point. My classes, I don't know about yours. I don't teach large classes. Mine are typically between 20 and 30. So I'm adamant about classroom discussions. I will bring in coffee. I will bring in seltzer. I play music. I'll invite students 10 minutes early and have conversations. I want them to know each other's names. I will at times nicely but pointedly say, you guys go to this side, you guys go to that side. That's again, similar topic and a miss. That I don't know what that price is, but those connections are important. Okay,
Oh,
now
yeah.
I'm ready to talk about the advantage.
But I definitely want to ditto that. Yeah, no, in fact, it's funny. I was just talking to a student. I always have candy in my office and a beanbag chair, and even a Pillsbury Doughboy that you can hug if you're having a bad day. So I totally, there is a certain amount of energy that comes with that. But moving on to sort of pros that you've noticed.
Right. So let's start with, well, the advantages, again, we got this hoist, no one's fault. We got, obviously we got this, in 6 days or in 8 days, you will now be teaching online. So that was hard. What I've done for my classes generally has been, I've taken the syllabus and shaken it and shaken it and shaken it, pulled it apart sort of piece by piece. And now in general, we'll talk about it more, is I do async sessions, recorded in advance sessions, where I really find I can take the time and not have to worry about the clock as much and really dive into a topic thoughtfully, quietly. If we need to do another take, that's fine. Usually we get it. I can use the whiteboard, at least on Zoom, and then have it prepped. I don't have a way of seeing if the students have watched it or not, but I think it's been invaluable. I think it doesn't replace, but I think it can alter the reading needs of the students. And I find it some of that heavy legwork is done in advance of the class, which leaves me, or all of us, with two possible advantages. One is we don't have to use the whole allotted class time because we've already used, we can. And the students last semester for me said, too much. The async is long, and now it's like, okay, we can back off. So take, and then I can use the live online session as a way of filling in. It's like, okay, you have all these fundamental elements. These are the ones I really want to drive home with you. That to me has been really good, and I'd like to keep, and I will keep, the async sessions and the idea of the async sessions. So I'll let you jump in and then I'll add some more thoughts.
Yeah, no, I would say, well, first of all, I heard the same thing about, the async sessions and then requiring that plus the other. And actually this semester I'm doing all synchronous. But I always have very well laid out and crafted PowerPoint presentation, and I upload always before each class that exact PowerPoint that kind of is a framework for analysis. I say it's the scaffolding upon which you can build an outline,
Sure.
right, as you put these all together. And so what I've done is it's very, very organized, right? And then you're able to kind of follow faces. And for the most part, my students, keep their screens on so you can see who's agreeing, who's not agreeing. And of course, they can raise their hands with questions midway, and build on that scaffolding, of course, taking a pause for discussions and breakout rooms. So I love your because I agree, getting that discussion involved is really, really important. And you do, like you said, with your asynchronous, you have to really be intentional in covering everything. And I find that, working on Zoom, providing different resources on the learning management system, we use Canvas, but providing all of this and always recording every session so that students can go back and re-listen if they were lost, I think provides different resources that they would not have if you were in just a regular live class in person.
Right. I think a similarity between being on campus and being on Zoom is it's still hard for me to read facial reactions. I don't know. Sometimes I'll do a session and I'll get emails like, that was great, that was wonderful. And I had no idea that they were enjoying it or whether they were lost or not. They're just, I don't think I require it. I know I don't require, I don't think the school requires it, but most students have their video on. Once in a while, I'll get a note from someone saying, I'm not feeling well, I'll be dark, to which I reply, best wishes, do whatever you need to do. I'm not ever going to make a case for that. And that's been fine. I don't know if you have any strategies for taking a temperature or gauging if your students are getting it, not getting it, enjoying it, 2 miles away.
Right. No. Well, number one, I think having office hours and still, how you had mentioned you go 10 minutes early when it's in person. I actually go 10 minutes early and stay after class on Zoom as well. And I found that is helpful because people will stay after and ask their questions or use Zoom office hours. But another strategy that I know we had mentioned before is this kind of use of breakout rooms, because
Yes.
I feel when we use breakout rooms, you more are able, because I love on Zoom how I laugh because I sort of feel like it's like Star Trek, beam me up, Scotty, you like go
Right.
to the breakout room and there's your head, you pop up. But I think, you really get a chance to check in with smaller groups. And so maybe somebody who doesn't feel comfortable in the larger group will speak up and ask the question in the breakout room. So I wondered your thoughts on that. And how do you use your breakout room?
Usually I do those breakout rooms before the session starts. And I'm sort of not, by acclamation, I'm not welcome. So I will randomly assign students. So there should be mixing every, and we do it almost every class, not every class. I'll give them a topic if they want, favorite place for a meal in your hometown, just something to get the conversation started, and they can do it. We do it for 5 or 10 minutes. I think those have been good. And I think it's been helpful. Again, it's not going to replace, but at least they're making some connection, and they seem to be doing okay. I mean, I think we're all getting weary. It's now springtime. We'd like to be outdoor. Any thoughts? I have a few other thoughts I'd want to jump in on.
I'd love to hear. Yeah, no, absolutely. Please.
It's sort of the same concept, which is, I'll talk about one, then the other. I've been trying to teach for years. I have been teaching for years abroad, but lots of schools that I'm interested in have said, love to have you. We don't have the budget. And even when I say you don't need it, it's just hard. But with Zoom, I've been teaching in Bogota and in Geneva or near Geneva, taught in Paris. It's not ideal, but it's given us inroads at zero cost. I mean, it's of course time, but I'm happy as heck to do that. And that to me, I can't be the only one. That's got to be right. And then on the flip side of that, which is, guests or experts who would be, I would have to find, I mean, we're in DC. There are lots of experts in DC, but, people I know, people I want to include. So I've had colleagues in Eastern France and Vancouver, across the US, now in Missouri. It's like, hey, can you jump into a conversation? And easy. So I think that has been a revelation, to be able to use it well. It's not such thing as a slam dunk, but it gives us a good start. So those have been, and I assume you have similar experience.
100%. I could not agree more. I mean, sometimes, you get zoomed out because you can give like so many presentations in a week that you feel like you don't even know how to talk to people normally, because now you're always like enunciating to a camera. But I do think that also the aspect of bringing in guest speakers like that and creating connections for students then afterwards so they can follow up. I mean, it's even turned into jobs in some circumstances, with my students being able to connect with a guest speaker because they really loved what that person was presenting on, and then to talk later via Zoom, and then they talk about a possible summer job. I couldn't agree more, and we wouldn't have done this to the same extent if we were face to face, right? Because then it would seem weird.
Yeah. You couldn't have someone on a TV. I mean, you could, but it wouldn't be much value.
No.
Maybe more of minor. The chat function, at times, it's never bad. At times it's good. Students will pop in with questions, but sometimes I don't like to ambush the students. Mm-hmm. So if we're talking along and we're in a dialogue, last week I texted or chatted privately to Nicole, hey, in 3 minutes, I'm going to be asking you about X. She replies, fine, I'm ready. And it just gives us a little bit of a connection. There's nothing to be gained by me ambushing Nicole. She's ready, she's good. That's been Now, if I was in the class, sometimes I'll walk over and tap her on the shoulder, or whoever on the shoulder, saying, "Hey," but it it helps. It's technology. We're using it. I think she would appreciate, and she could have said, "No, I'm not today." I'm fine.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was fine. So I think that's helpful with Zoom.
Well, and the other one is you can have different scenarios or maybe do a quiz where students can, give their reaction immediately, and you can gather up and kind of test the pulse even, and say, okay, if these facts, what do you guys think? Would there be jurisdiction or whatever the question is?
Correct.
And then people, there's this, it gives kind of an assessment, or at least get the pulse of the people, right? And using the reaction functions, I know, has been something that I find really helpful, and polling functions as well.
Right. Hold on. I'm taking a note. So I have so I can come back to it. So I have a colleague, actually in Lausanne. Anyway, she teaches to 300 students. She's adamant about the surveys. We've done it together. I see the value. I'm not sold on them yet. And it might just part of it be comfort. But I rarely in the classroom will say, okay, raise your hands if you think whatever. But yes, absolutely. And now the online survey software is fantastic. Immediate. So I see the value. I'm gonna have to work my way toward it.
But there's always the cost benefit, and you don't want to have so many bells and whistles, right? So that it gets
Right.
distracting, because sometimes the chat can be distracting too, where there's like too much
Yes.
going on and you can't sort of keep track of it all.
And I don't know whether the listeners care, but I think the whiteboard function in Zoom is really first rate and better than the Microsoft. Sometimes I'll need a whiteboard and I'll just go onto a Zoom meeting with myself and use the whiteboard and then copy and paste, take a screenshot.
Yeah.
I don't particularly care for PowerPoint, just never have. I'd much rather write in real time, even if I have to do it over and over again during class to class. I don't know. I just taught my way through it, and I find it to be mostly every so often I'll do something like, what the heck was that? But it's rare. The students are fine. It's like, oh, I just messed up.
Right. Well, but the cool thing, I guess, is that make lemonade out of lemons, whatever. But looking at over the last year, I think many of us have really sort of been creative. I know you had mentioned YouTube videos and other ways that you can sort of be creative and try things out. It's like a laboratory in some ways, trying different things in order to sort of increase our ability to get our points across.
Yeah, and our school, I don't know if this is topical, but I'll mention anyway. Our school did away this semester with spring break. Not sure, there was logic to it, is fine, but they encouraged us to take a class and do something interesting and left it as vague. Like, okay. So it's a much longer story, but I ended up sending a note to Lorenzo Alexander, who recently retired as an NFL football player, who's been active in business and active in NFL Players Association, and met him blind. I just sent him a note. It's like, can you talk to law students about your expectations as a client, your work, what you see, and just chat. And he sat by his pool in Arizona, distance, and the students were incredible. We had the most questions ever, which I took personally, but he was fantastic. So I think that, again, it's similar to what we talked about, having distance, but it was like, okay, I've been challenged to be creative. I can think of something.
Oh, I like it. That sounds fun. Absolutely.
It was great. It was a treat for me. Who the heck doesn't like a sports star or
right?
music star, right? I mean, it was and I could, I was like, okay, I'm just going to ask you a sports question right now.
Right.
Most of the topics were, leadership and dealing with adversity and hard work, but what the hell? You can ask them about a blitzing scheme once in a while.
No, that's fantastic. Well, listen, I told you I wouldn't take up too much of your time, but I just thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, and,
I appreciate
more to come, right? We may learn more things.
Yeah, my only takeaway, or not my only takeaway, I do think we're going to return to class. We'll hopefully all be healthy, and then, you know, students will bounce back. But I do think in particular, async will be something that's helpful and will be integrated.
Mhm.
And we'll see. Well, be well. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure.